What made you love anime? For many, it's the stories that stay with us, the ones that challenge our perspective and make us feel something profound, something impossible to replicate. Clannad made me cry with its deep and unforgiving story. Bocchi the Rock made me laugh with its incredibly creative execution. Death Parade left me scared yet curious about its haunting world. And Steins Gate, it managed to do it all. It gave me a feeling I kept chasing, a mix of awe, heartbreak, and fascination that felt just out of reach. But one anime this season feels different, special even. On the Movements of the Earth stirred something in me that I hadn't felt in years. It brought together everything I love about anime, in a way I never expected. It's a story of courage, curiosity, and the cost of chasing knowledge in a world that fears it. Set in 15th century Poland, it follows Rafał, a brilliant young boy getting ready to study theology. A common and respected path for higher learning at the time. Clever and ambitious, Rafał has always known how to handle life to get the best results. However, his life takes a dramatic turn when his father forces him to assist Hubert, a man who was once thrown in prison for his dangerous ideas. Although Hubert was released after pretending to abandon his beliefs, he hasn't stopped his work. He is an astronomer, convinced that the Earth moves around the Sun, a theory called heliocentrism. At the time, this idea wasn't just controversial, it was forbidden. The church and society believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and questioning this belief was considered dangerous and even sinful. But Hubert refuses to back down. He's determined to protect his research, even if it means forcing Rafał to listen to his ideas. Rafał, initially skeptical, dismisses Hubert's ideas as absurd, but one life-altering fall changes everything. Gazing at the heavens from a new perspective, Rafał begins to question everything he once believed. Overwhelmed by curiosity and doubt, he starts investigating heliocentrism, not just to test its validity, but to regain his own sanity. Their work, however, doesn't go unnoticed. When the church finds out about their research, they act quickly and harshly. Hubert is taken away, accused of heresy, and sentenced to death. As he faces his executioners, Hubert remains calm and determined. That scene, the moment of Hubert's unwavering resolve in the face of death, was what truly made me fall in love with this anime. That moment stayed with me long after I finished watching. Seeing Hubert's sacrifice reminded me of the power of ideas, and the cost of believing in something greater than yourself. Now, Rafał has to take on his mentor's mission, working to prove that Hubert was right, while trying to avoid the same fate. But Rafał's journey isn't just about proving Hubert right. It's about navigating a world steeped in tradition, fear, and control. The oppressive environment around him doesn't just set the stage, it's a constant looming force that shapes every decision he makes. And that is where Orb's incredible world building truly shines. It's a fascinating anime. Its world building is quite literally out of this world. One of the most captivating things about Orb is how vividly it recreates the world of 15th century Poland. The setting isn't just a backdrop, it's integral to the story. The show immerses you in an era where the church held immense power over society, controlling not just faith but science, education, and even people's thoughts. The anime captures this tension beautifully. The architecture, from towering cathedrals to small, dimly lit classrooms, reflects the weight of religious influence. Streets filled with whispers of suspicion remind you that this was a time when even the slightest deviation from accepted beliefs could ruin lives. The show doesn't shy away from the harsher realities of the era either. It highlights how dangerous it was to question authority. Men like Hubert could be imprisoned or executed, and for women, the risk was even greater. They were often labeled witches, tortured, or burned at the stake for their knowledge or independence. This oppressive world isn't just through words, it felt in every frame. Or brings the fear and tension of the era to life through its visuals and sound, immersing the audience in a time where even a whispered idea could lead to destruction. The animation shifts between warm golden tones during moments of discovery and cold, shadowy palettes when danger looms. The sound design is equally powerful, with the echo of church bells and whispering of fear adding to the oppressive atmosphere. The world isn't just historically accurate, it's emotionally immersive. You feel the weight of every choice the characters make, because the consequences are so vividly portrayed. That said, while the world building is rooted in historical details, the story itself is fictional. The church did wield immense control over society, imprisoning, torturing, and executing those who challenged its authority. But it wasn't necessarily opposed to science or progress. or incorporates historical elements like discussions of early astronomical theories and the atmosphere of the time, but it ultimately tells a fictional tale inspired by these themes. It's important to keep this distinction in mind. Now, if you haven't seen the anime yet, the rest of the video will contain heavy spoilers. I highly recommend watching it first before continuing, but don't forget to subscribe so you can come back later. Initially, what drew me to the story was its style, the animation and the color palette. What made me stay was its obsession with the universe, and what made me love it were its amazing characters and the interactions between them. However, that last part quickly changes. In episode 3, just like Hubert, Raphael also gets arrested after his father is threatened. If he doesn't rat out Raphael, he will be considered an accomplice and thrown into prison, where unlike Raphael, he will be murdered since it's not his first offense. His father tries his best to steer Raphael away from this path, hoping to convince himself that Raphael isn't actually pursuing this research and that it's all in his imagination. However, Raphael, without any fear, confirms his research. By the next morning, his father gives in, rats him out, and Raphael is arrested. Noak then attempts to make a deal with Raphael, offering him a scholarship and the chance to study theology if he publicly renounces his beliefs in court. At first, as viewers we believe this will define the story's direction. Raphael will go to university, study astronomy in secret, and work alongside like-minded people to prove that heliocentrism is real. However, that's not what happens at all. Raphael tears up the paper, is thrown back into prison, poisons himself, and by the end of the episode, dies. It's a massive shock. Hubert's death was sad but somewhat expected. Raphael's death, on the other hand, is completely unexpected and jarring. Before the start of the next episode, I honestly thought surely this is just a joke. They didn't actually kill the main character in the third episode. There must be something we don't know. But that wasn't the case. The story jumps forward in time, the characters change, yet the narrative continues. Despite my initial belief that I wouldn't enjoy the show as much without Raphael, I was wrong. That's when I realized this isn't a story about characters, it's a story with characters. What makes On the Movement of the Earth so fascinating is that while the story isn't tied to a single character, every character is tied to the same obsession, astronomy, and understanding the universe. But what drives each of them isn't just their shared interest, it's how differently they approach it. Some, like Hubert, see astronomy as a calling, a truth worth risking everything for. Others, like Raphael's father, see it as a threat, something to fear because it disrupts the order of their world. Then there are those like Novak, who view it as an opportunity to control others, to manipulate knowledge for personal or societal gain. Each character's perspective is shaped by their intelligence, social status, and beliefs, yet they are all connected by this shared threat, the universe. This shared obsession isn't just a theme, it's the story's driving force. It pushes the characters into conflict, brings them together and tears them apart. And as the narrative shifts across time and introduces new characters, that obsession remains the constant. A reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is both timeless and deeply personal. Later in the story, we meet Otzi, Padani, and Yolenta. What I found so compelling about their introduction is how different they are from Raphael or Hubert. While they all share a fascination with the universe, their motives and perspective are worlds apart. Some see astronomy as a path to power, others as a source of meaning, and a few as a question to be solved. But of all the stories, the one that struck me the most was Pias, a man who spent his entire life trying to prove his master's belief in geocentrism. His master's approach stood out to me because it wasn't about being right or wrong. He believed the geocentric model was flawed, but not inherently incorrect. Humanity had simply misunderstood it. To him, the truth wasn't about sides or opinions, it was about unraveling the mysteries of the universe, one step at a time. Pias dedicated his life to this idea, pouring everything into proving his master's theories. But doubt began to creep in when he observed something no one else believed in, a fully visible Venus. Something impossible under the geocentric model, unless the Earth was moving. I won't recap the entire story, but the moment that stayed with me was when Pias on his deathbed finally accepted the truth. He realized that everything he had done, all his research and struggles, might have been wrong. But instead of despair, he felt peace. For Pias, it wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about the pursuit of knowledge, the willingness to question, and the courage to embrace the truth no matter where it led. Because at the end of the day, that's what mattered to him. Not whether his beliefs were validated, but that he had sought the truth. The anime is essentially filled with stories like this, all revolving around a single idea, and I really like that. It writes its characters in a way that makes it easy to get attached to them, and no part feels weaker than another. That is because there's only one overarching story, and no matter whose perspective we follow, the goal remains the same, only the motivations behind its salvation differ. What I found even more fascinating is how the anime treats the universe itself, not just as a setting, but almost as a character. It's always present, always influencing the choices the characters make, whether it's the stars that spark their curiosity, or the celestial phenomena that shatters their beliefs. The universe isn't just something they study, it's something they interact with, question, and fear. So what made you love anime? It's a question I asked at the start of this video, and after reflecting on all, I think I found my answer. It's the stories that stay with you. The anime isn't just about astronomy or the universe, it's about humanity, the unrelenting pursuit of truth, the sacrifices we make for what we believe in, and the connections we form when we dare to dream of something greater. The characters in this anime may be fictional, but their struggles are real. They remind us of the courage it takes to ask questions, to challenge what we think we know, and to accept that we might not have all the answers. And that is why I love anime, because every so often you find a story like this, one that lingers long after the credits rolls. A story that doesn't just entertain you, but leaves you thinking, feeling, and questioning the world around you. If you are looking for another anime as thought-provoking as this one, click on this video. And if you enjoyed this one, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I see you next time.